cars as a component, as a product, are about, the most important, the most iconic manufactured thing that both we make and that is made around the world. So it's no surprise that Donald Trump has started to focus on this. It's worth just kind of relating what we've just heard about from the US president to what we've just heard about from the Chancellor in the spring statement, because obviously we had a lot of detail on the state of the UK economy, and it raises the question, how much could all of that be changed in the event of these tariffs, but also a potential wider trade war? So just quick bit of revision here. This is what the growth forecast said last time around. We got the update in the spring statement, a bit of a cut for this year, quite a big cut for this year, but upgrades in the future years. So remember that. The economy was looking like it was going to be growing quite fast if you're not assuming there's going to be a trade war. And then, of course, the focus wasn't just on economic growth. The focus as well was on the state of the public finances, and a lot of focus on this, headroom, the amount of headroom the Chancellor had against her fiscal targets. So much emphasis on trying to keep that headroom at £9.9 billion, because, of course, it went down as a result of the economy being weaker, as a result of higher debt interest costs. All of that headroom got wiped out. And why does all of this matter? Why are we fixating on this notion of headroom and fiscal rules? It's because the Chancellor did all of those cuts, whether it was welfare cuts, spending cuts, all the rest of it, a lot of them with lots of impacts on many people, just to try to get this back to £9.9 billion. So it's incredibly consequential, at least as far as she's concerned. Raising the question, what happens to that in the event of a trade war? Well, the Office of Budget Responsibility actually did an exercise on this. And look at this. So if tariffs are imposed on China, on Canada, on Mexico. So China's already facing tariffs, but what about Canada? What about Mexico? Here's what would happen to that headroom. So the UK economy would be impacted and the headroom would go down. If you have a wider trade war, look at what it does to this again. That goes down basically to zero. It gets wiped out. So regardless of what Rachel Reeves does, the impact of what's happening right now in the White House, elsewhere in the US, could have an enormous impact, far bigger than any of the impacts that she's taken so far in the UK. And it's not just on the fiscal situation, it's also growth. So you saw the growth numbers before. This is just reiterating what the growth forecasts from the Office of Budget Responsibility were yesterday. How do they get impacted if you do have a trade war? Well, if you have an all-out trade war, look at these bars, OK? They get cut by a lot, basically more than halved in most of these years going out into the future. So what looked like strong growth basically suddenly disappears, and you're left with maybe not quite a recession, but quite close to it. Certainly very weak growth off into the future. Again, that's as a result of global factors. Final thing to say, how much could the UK be impacted by this? And when you look at the different exports from Britain to the US, the different categories, well, we send a lot of machinery to the US, also lots of pharmaceuticals, precious metals, that's mostly gold just kind of floating around part of the financial system, optical equipment. But the second biggest of all the categories of things that the UK sends to America, it's vehicles. This is looking back over the last few years, so it's £35 billion over the last 5 years. That is a lot of money. It's a big part of the economy. And if that does get affected, that's going to have big consequences, all of which is why this stuff, it's not theoretical anymore. It's becoming quite real. And, we've spoken to producers of steel who are now already having to pay those tariffs. The longer this stays in place, the more the damage on the UK economy could be.